Tonight, the Raptors' journey begins as pro basketball returns to Toronto. Welcome live to Toronto, Ontario, the home opener for the Toronto Raptors in front of 30,000.
50 years is a long time to wait.
The Toronto Raptors are the 2019 NBA champions.
But Toronto waited anyway, through silence, through heartbreak, through hope, an unrequited love that whispered in the winter wind. But eventually, that frigid air thawed, and that whisper grew into a roar reverberating over gentle lakes. Long before the days of Chris Bosh or Vinsanity, the city of Toronto developed a love for the game played with a round ball and a hoop. The game's founder was Canadian, and the first NBA game ever, it was played right here between the Toronto Huskies and the New York Knicks. But within a year, the Huskies franchise collapsed. Toronto would be forced to watch from afar, peering through the windows and past pine trees for decades. But in the 90s, as the league grew and its finances stabilized, expansion came once again. And this time, it had its eyes set on those quiet stoics up in the Great North. Almost 49 years to the exact day, Toronto watched a professional basketball team play for their city, and they were called the Raptors. Things were a little rough for a couple years, such is life for early stage expansion teams, but they didn't have to wait long to see one of those superstars clad in their own shade of purple.
This is the finale on the first round for Vince Carter.
Vince Carter was everything to Raptors fans. Half man, half amazing. A walking highlight reel that revived the nation's budding love for the game and put the Raptors on the map. For 6 years, the city and that high-flying icon enjoyed a special connection. But man, in time, those Canadian winters got too cold for the kid from Florida. Air Canada stopped chartering flights, but in his place, they found another silky scorer from down south.
Not happening.
Bosh, powerful, right in the grill of Jamal McGraw.
Chris Bosh was set with carrying the flag for a while, but eventually he left in search of warmer summers as well. Things were bleak for a handful of years, but as the league turned their eyes away, something happened. After one long, frigid February, those magnolia trees started to bloom. It was subtle at first, a promising backcourt, a steady increase in win totals, and then they were in the playoffs. Those two guards were even better, and in the land of the maple leaf, they were winning people over. They were both quiet, both overlooked, both fueled with the same silent defiance. They didn't talk big, they didn't have to. Every glance, every gesture, every step, they told you exactly who they were. These two were tenacious, the kind of blue-collar gym rats that worked through the cold. And of course the Six could get behind that. Kyle Lowry and DeMar DeRozan took their lumps in their first two playoff runs, but by their third, they were ready for that leap. Lowry was the general now. He orchestrated all of it, set the defensive tone, and gave them a timely bucket whenever they needed it. DeRozan was the engine, a 6'6", hyper-athletic two-guard with a penchant for posters. And it didn't take much for Raptor fans to warm up to that archetype. For 3 consecutive seasons, they went all the way to the Eastern Conference title, but every single time, that same man sent them back home. The summer after the second consecutive sweep at LeBron James' hands, something had to change. First, they took matters into their own hands, dismissing head coach Dwayne Casey and promoting assistant Nick Nurse. It wasn't riveting, but it was an injection of some new blood, and they needed as much new as they could stomach after a trio of seasons ended with a sense of deja vu. Soon after the coaching change, they got the news they had been waiting to hear. The King was heading west and the path had cleared for them. And amidst the celebration, the phone rang, delivering a message they hardly had the heart to hear.
The deal is final. The Spurs will send Kawhi Leonard and Danny Green to the Raptors for DeMar DeRozan, Jakob Poeltl, and a 2019 first-round pick.
It was the definition of bittersweet, but Masai Ujiri knew it had to be done. This was a rare shot at bringing in a top 5 talent, and with this roster, that meant opening not just a window, the window. Fred VanVleet wasn't just a good story anymore. He was a proven, big-time playmaker that rose to the moment every time. OG Anunoby was looking more and more like a high-level 3-and-D wing with every passing game, and Pascal Siakam was a wiry blur of raw talent. If they plugged Kawhi Leonard into the middle of this, they could win the whole damn thing. It was the kind of gamble that makes careers or breaks reputations, and the terms were clear. Kawhi was not re-signing. They had exactly 1 year to go the distance, and it would cost them one half of the superstar duo that brought the fan base back to life. Through barely held back tears and painful goodbyes, DeMar DeRozan was traded to San Antonio, and the Claw was a Raptor. It was an odd media day. There was an air of excitement, an undercurrent of mourning, and an overwhelming sense of unfamiliarity. This all felt fake, like an alternate reality from that one account with the asterisks. But when the season tipped off, reality set in, and it turned out these new look Raptors were really, really good. Coming up on the All-Star game, they were 40-16, cruising to another deep playoff run, invigorated by that bad man in Cleveland struggling out on the West Coast. But then, the Suits made another move. There was a one-of-a-kind, two-way visionary on the market, a grizzled Spaniard, tougher than concrete and smoother than silk, and most importantly, he had a sense of urgency. Marc Gasol had watched his fair share of deep playoff runs unravel just before the finals, and he knew the clock was ticking. Memphis certainly wasn't in a position to contend, so they did the right thing and sent him somewhere he could. Now they had their core, a mix of newcomers with giant reputations, young guys carving out their place in the league, and the other half of one iconic teammate bond, sacrificed in the name of a championship not yet won. 58-24 was great, but it was one win less than the previous season, and even if there were 10 more, it probably wouldn't have mattered. The legacy of this season would be defined by the playoffs. The table was set, the lights were dimming, and the city held its breath. All that was left was to play.
Listen, we have the best player, we have the best fans in the whole NBA, in the whole world. Look around you. Look at this. We created this. This didn't exist before we were here. Look around at the square. I promise you right now, we did this.
The energy in Game 1 was palpable. An overwhelming roar drowned out every trace of anxiety. Then, DJ Augustine stepped into a game winner. And the trepidation stormed right back. What if this didn't work? What if Kawhi walked away in the offseason without a second thought? What if they lost DeRozan for nothing? But the Raptors got it together. They tightened the bolts, reinforced the foundations, and sent the Magic back to Orlando in 5 games. But the next round would prove to be a tougher test. Philadelphia had a seasoned superstar wing to contend with Leonard, a young phenom to battle with Lowry at point, and an ascending giant ready to take the East by force. Everybody got a word in. Kawhi put on his cape, decorating the series with elevated performances that reminded everyone why the trade was made in the first place. And Jimmy Butler responded with lion-hearted masterpieces. Pascal Siakam took the next step in front of everyone, and Joel Embiid routinely rose to the occasion. Kyle Lowry made winning play after winning play, while Ben Simmons chased the shadow of his two-way impact. You could tell from the opening tip that this series was bound to go the distance, and when Game 7 did inevitably roll around, both rosters felt the weight of the moment. Shots fell flat in the air, touch fouls were a distant memory, but everyone in the arena knew it. If Toronto was going to get back to the Eastern Conference Finals, it would be on the back of Kawhi Leonard. The game was tied, and the series was on the line. The silent assassin they were still just getting to know dove to the corner, outrunning a double team, barely getting a fadeaway over the outstretched arms of Embiid. Time froze. The crowd went silent, and then the world waited.
Here if you're Philly.
It's off to Leonard, defended by Simmons. Is this the dagger?
Elation spread like a wildfire through the arena. The dream wasn't realized, but it wasn't dead either. They were back in the Eastern Conference Finals, and this time, there was no regent in their way, but there was a monster, a 6'10" Greek hero that broke out of his marble casing and rampaged through their defense en route to an 0-2 lead. It felt like the cruelest twist of fate yet, the solemn sacrifice, the optimistic rallying in spite of repeated failure, and then a flicker of hope burning briefly through one playoff miracle, all just to watch it end the same way, in the same round. But this time, they had Kawhi.
Where do you go from here, Kawhi? Where do you go from here?
I'm going to Toronto, Game 3.
Nick Nurse made a change, pivoting from a defense by committee approach to a one-on-one duel. It was the Claw's responsibility now, and it didn't take long to answer the call. Kawhi smothered Giannis in the next 4 games. The Raptors slowed the game down, got Fred VanVleet involved, and in the blink of an eye, they got it done. They finally cleared the hurdle that towered over them. After 50 years of silence, 24 years of struggling, and one eye-watering transaction, basketball's distant admirer was finally going to get its chance to carve its name into the history of the game. But standing across the half-court line was a shimmering empire with more firepower than a military superpower. The Golden State Warriors, as I'm sure you know, were the juggernaut of the past decade, a trio of otherworldly shooters, complemented by a duo of shape-shifting defenders. That same man who ended their seasons without a sweat came up short twice in a row against these dubs, and the upset picks weren't exactly flooding in.
Anybody that knows basketball, I don't know how you can see them pulling off a victory over the Golden State Warriors. I'm sorry, I just don't see it. Not the way Clay's been playing and the way Steph has been playing. Toronto, good luck, and I'm glad you enjoyed yourself tonight, because I don't see it happening.
Kevin Durant was unlikely to play the first few games as he nursed a calf injury, but even without him, this group had gone 73-9 just a few years ago. A nice change of pace to see the frozen frontier get its day under the sun. But those golden trophies belonged on golden coasts. Game 1 was meant to be a redundant showcase, but that overlooked group of aging vets, ascending youngsters, and high-profile vagabonds flipped the script. They gave those fans something to witness, a reason to hold on to those ticket stubs. They fell in Game 2, but then they bounced back with 2 in a row, and now they could see their own distant reflection in the Larry O'Brien. Durant, though, battled back to play in Game 5 before a torn Achilles tragically ended his series. But Steph and Clay stepped up in his absence and willed the series back home to Golden State. Then in Game 6, the Warriors lost Clay too, out with a torn ACL after an awkward landing on a fast break. The war of attrition was wearing on the dynasty, but champions never wilt. If they fall throwing haymakers and taking jabs. Steph gave it all he had. Draymond upped his effort to another level, and Iguodala turned back the clock. Even without KD or Clay, the Raptors were going to have to rip this one away to avoid a do-or-die Game 7, and they would have to do it in front of that notoriously raucous oracle crowd. They turned to the man that brought them here, the cybernetic superhuman they relied on all season, but he was out of gas. It would have to be someone else this time. And as a team of giants frantically looked around, their two undersized point guards met the moment. Fred VanVleet buried big shot after big shot, tuning out the deafening noise and stepping into pull-ups like he'd been here countless times before. Kyle Lowry made heady play after heady play, controlling the flow of the game when his shot wasn't falling. It still felt like Steph would pull a rabbit out of the hat, or that Draymond would steal extra possession after extra possession. But in the end, that Warrior magic ran out.
There's a new NBA champion, and it's a team from Toronto, Canada. We, the North, are now
Finally, after decades of radio silence and years of emotional toil, the NBA was sending a memento back to its long-lost home. That summer, only one thing mattered. There was a basketball team in Toronto once again, but this time they weren't folding. For over 50 years they waited through the silence, through the heartbreak, through the hope. And now, after all that waiting, they weren't just watching from afar. They were here. They were champions. That champagne might have tasted like soap at first, but judging by the parade, they all got used to it. Those folks up in the Great North don't love cold winters. No one does. There's no joy in a bitter landscape. No warmth in towering snowbanks, but every year they held true, clinging to their convictions, holding steadfast in their identities, because they knew eventually all snowfall melts. And when they did, when the air thawed and the whispers turned into a roar, Toronto finally stepped into that light. It was more than a trophy, more than a banner. It was recognition, proof of belonging, earned acceptance after years and years of hushed denials. A moment they always believed they would see. Clouds don't last forever, and if you can wait it out, you'll see the sun sparkle off those magnolia trees again. It takes patience, it takes grit, it takes sacrifice, and sometimes it even takes a calculated risk. But the hardy people of Canada never wavered. Up there, they know you earn the moment by enduring the wait with dignity. Long before the days of Chris Bosh or Vinsanity, Toronto loved basketball, and now it loved them back.
And like they said, enjoy this moment, and have fun with it. Ha 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 ha. Yeah!